everyone, Miss GoElectric here. Today I'm in downtown Detroit at Newlab, which is a facility that is like an incubator for a lot of startup companies, especially in the eMobility space. And today I'm meeting up with Justin and Chris from Bloom, and we're gonna find out how they're changing the e-bike industry. Let's go. I would love to get a little tour of the facility and see what you guys are doing here in downtown Detroit with Bloom, because this is a fairly new company, right?
Yeah, we started just a little over a year ago. We were kind of like behind the scenes, putting a lot of the pieces together, but ultimately launched this past March. But the heart of a lot of what we're building is to encourage more like domestic manufacturing and assembly. And so Detroit really felt like the best place for it. There's a variety of different things that we do, including like warehousing, logistics, service after sales, different aspects, really supporting the back-end physical operations of light electric vehicle companies, really hardware companies in general.
Let's check out the space. I mean, there's a lot that's done just in this building, isn't there?
Absolutely. Yeah, this building's really great. Historically, this was originally a post office, but then it became a book repository. And then this is, kind of part of like a adaptive reuse program where they really reimagine this building into this like innovation center, and it's really became that. I mean, ultimately, there's like over 100 companies that operate out of this building today. This space all is part of Michigan Central, which ultimately is kind of a rebirth of this area in a lot of ways, and trying to attract new, innovative minds and companies and ideas. So
for the future. Yeah.
Yeah, and Chris and I had met at the Newlab in Brooklyn, where we last all met, and we really hatched the plan for Bloom. But as we were looking at where and how and what we were going to build this, the Detroit and Newlab opening this location in April of 2023 really was perfect timing as we were starting to make this transition and scale up for electric bikes, electric scooters, motorcycles, all form factors smaller than cars and trucks. It's kind of perfect timing.
Oh yeah, and I see quite a few along this line here. So it's cool to see a wide variety of options too.
Yeah, and that's the beautiful thing is, about Bloom and building out this network. We realized that a lot of the problems that we're facing, electric scooters and motorcycles, we're also facing electric bikes and everything in between and smaller form factors. All of these really need the same basic services of better warehousing, better assembly options, better after sales support, and this network that Bloom started to put together.
So you guys both had your own e-bike companies, but you came together to run Bloom. So can you tell me a little bit more about how the revenue works with running an operation like this?
Well, first, I mean, Chris and I both, about a year and a half ago, we started to see from two different perspectives. We really started to see what was happening kind of inside the industry. There was a lot of the beginning points of, some of the e-bike companies failing and really facing serious issues. And it wasn't necessarily a demand issue, right? Growth was still there, although slowing a little bit, but the demand was still there. People still wanted, e-bikes, electric motorcycles, electric scooters. But really, we saw that it was the fundamentals behind the scenes was kind of the unsexy part of the business, is how they were warehousing, how they were moving goods around, how they were assembling, how they were handling replacement parts, all this kind of back end. I firsthand at Vela, and Chris working with a number of his brands through Propel, we thought that we could create this network for Bloom. We've got this growing volume. We have close to 36 mobility companies on our platform now. So they pay a monthly membership fee to have access to our warehouse partners, our logistics partners, our after sales support network, all of these important functions of operating your hardware business. And we save money on each one of those. So because we all come together and support that, we're able to lower that cost, both operating costs, but also unit economics costs. And this, both small brands, medium size, even some of the largest brands in the space are very interested, and we can support on all of that, all of those levels. We have close to 20 warehouses around the country as part of the network, 8 contract manufacturers to do different levels of assembly, knockdown kit assembly, full manufacturing. and then a growing network of after-sales support network that we're building out. We really saw firsthand the difficulty and the issues that more and more of the industry was facing, and that, we could put this together, and we were in a prime position.
App companies before AWS, they had to manage their own servers, right? And that's kind of how micromobility is today, that basically companies are managing all these back-end pieces of their business that are not really relevant to the betterment of their product. And so by enabling them to actually outsource some aspects of their business, they can really focus more on their product and their core business, and sales and marketing, different aspects like that. And, in a similar way, the app companies now, they could depend on AWS and they just let that, work. So ultimately, that's in a lot of ways what we're building is really a connected network for companies to depend on. And so you need a lot of different elements. But one of those elements is, prototyping, low volume, manufacturing, assembly, and that sort of thing. And something that historically the U.S. has not really done that well with. It's like maybe you can hobble together a prototype, but if you want to do any like low volume or medium volume manufacturing assembly, generally you have to go overseas. But to enable companies to have more capabilities domestically, we feel like that's a critical piece, and we feel like Newlab really supports the enablement of that specifically. So we're really excited. I mean, just this building alone, there's about $15 million invested in the shop space equipment alone. So this is likely one of the most capable shared shop spaces in the country, perhaps even in the world. I guess probably you could say that in the world to some extent, because generally it's not available in a shared space, So the way that Newlab can enable individual members to utilize a space, and then, Bloom and some of our partners can really augment that to the next level. That's really the idea.
And then you have a partnership to be able to manufacture things. So you'll be able to basically be a one-stop shop for a lot of these companies that are trying to get their foot off the ground.
That's the idea. Whatever stage somebody is at, really we want to support them there. We also see, like, if you're starting out, it is a lot lower risk if you can build prototypes and do low volume assembly, and as opposed to going directly from a prototype into scale manufacturing, what a lot of companies do. They don't even know if the product's good yet. And that's a very dangerous and risky proposition. So trying to de-risk that and allow companies to have that option. But if a company is at more scale, they need other things, and certainly one of the most common things that we found is really in like warehousing logistics, because most companies, they don't depend on 3PLs, even though most other industries use 3PLs. Specifically in this industry, because there's a lot of these wraparound services that companies need, they need some level of assembly. They need rework. They need, reverse logistics. And most 3PL companies are not designed to support that. So we've established a network of companies that are, and that are specifically focused on that, which we think is critical.
The reason why choosing Detroit was so key in all this coming together is we see a lot of automotive and parts suppliers for automotive and other elements of the automotive industry wanting to get into other form factors, and us being an incredible bridge for them to start manufacturing and scaling contract manufacturing for smaller electric mobility. So everything smaller than the car and truck, low speed neighborhood vehicles, electric motorcycles, scooters, e-bikes, everything in between, offering that bridge for automotive to start to get involved in really the growth and the opportunity. Since, as we mentioned on the last time we chatted, 97% of these vehicles are imported. That number is actually declining, more and more being built here, and we're helping to really bridge that gap. We're seeing the birth of transportation companies, not just automotive companies. You look at the rate of, younger people not getting their driver's license, more and more people looking for alternatives. This is a prime, perfect way for them to, Bloom to pull it all together and more get involved.
And as you guys can probably see, there's a lot of people moving through here. That's because this is one of the first days that Ford employees are actually moving into the building next to us at Central Station. So they're doing a tour of the facility right now. There are so many people coming down here to work on electric mobility and bringing it here to the city of Detroit, which is exciting as being a Michigan native for everyone deciding that this is the place to be.
What we're finding, it's not necessarily just the the name brands that you know in the automotive that are getting into the space. If you look at it, for every automotive company, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of suppliers behind them. And those folks are also impacted by a lot of these changes. And they really need to diversify their customer base. And maybe it's not always the best to have a very small number of customers to have a very large share of your business. If you lose one of them, you're in a very vulnerable spot. And so ultimately, these type of vehicles, yeah, they're a little bit lower volume, but having that more diverse customer base is a lot better for their, sustainability as a company. And then, ultimately, if you bring more domestic manufacturing and assembly, you can have a better seat at the table on the government side when you're asking for infrastructure, which at the moment, the bike industry doesn't really have a leg to stand on because they're not producing here. They're not creating jobs. And that's a big deal that I think a lot of people don't recognize.
Well, I would love to see some of those facilities that you're talking about, prototyping and stuff like that, and see actually how that happens here. So let's go check it out.
Let's do it. Throughout the hallways of the building, you could see a lot of the different brands or companies that are showcasing their innovation, but a lot of them are leveraging this really expansive shop space. So here's a bunch of additive manufacturing machines, or 3D printers, as most would know them as. I mean, in theory, you could even build like a full-scale frame, at least for like prototyping and different things like that. So really expansive. Again, these are the type of things that you wouldn't generally find in a shared shop space, but it's great to have them available. So this is just one section of the shop, but really expands around this whole area. Voltpost is a really rising star in the EV charging space.
Yeah, we've reported on them on our weekly news show, so it's pretty cool to see that they're right here.
Yeah. And then this here is more of the general shop space. And basically you have everything like, this is more like woodworking, composites, different things like that. And then on the other side, we have more metalworking. This is something we find more in mobility specifically. There's quite a bit where basically several different CNC machines here. Again, this is something that you might generally find more in a production environment, but to have it available for use. And then they also have operators that can support that as well. Actually, Caroline's working on a machine. She's actually an employee of Newlab, so she supports companies where their companies need a part made, or if they want to collaborate with somebody to make the part, or have her teach you how to use the machine. So inside here we actually have a small assembly line that companies are able to do kind of low volume assembly, low medium volume assembly.
We robotic bike wheel building machine, some of the only in the US, can produce quite a bit on a daily basis, but also wheels for scooters, motorcycles, and others. Really kind of giving them as, small batch contract manufacturing here and also close by, but that's something that it lessens like an automotive supplier that wants to start assembling scooters or something. We can still do the wheel building here and really work in tandem with them.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't realize how precise the building of the wheel has to be, especially with the spokes and stuff. So it's that's just a big feat in itself to have it right here so that you can make sure that it is completely perfect when it goes out the door.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really amazing what a robot can do in relation to that. And I think that these are some of the things that you think about. Quite often, it's always brought up of okay, well, labor in Asia costs this, but what is it in the U.S.? It's a lot more. But when you can leverage, some automation, different technology, allows you to do quite a bit. So
yeah, and we see that a lot in the Asian companies, that they are basically automating so many things. A lot of people thought that it's cheap labor, which is really helping them, advance so quickly. But as far as I understand, the automation is the bigger story there, is that they can automate more, whereas our country is a little bit more about having workers and unions and things like that to build jobs.
right. But you need a balance of these different aspects, and I think we need to be smart about it if we want to really be competitive and be supportive of this new era. So this actually early version of the Civilized semi-trike, which was specifically built in the building. So they're actually doing a pilot with Lime scooters. So ultimately, they're rebalancing Lime scooters. They can hold 8 Lime scooters on this trailer. They can actually carry 800 pounds. They tested to carry on what is considered in many jurisdictions as a bicycle trailer, which is crazy. Just kind of mind blowing.
So Civilized started in Brooklyn, Newlab location. Prime example of someone, Zach is a close friend and obviously works with Bloom and Newlab network. But this allows him quite a bit more space and facilities here in the building to be able to take the same technology in his Civilized Civ 1 and use it in a much larger form factor for the trike, which is start doing, they're building the next one with a big box on top too, a lot of package delivery and other pieces. So.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, I haven't really seen anything quite like this before. So,
I was just going to say that because I think that is really in a lot of ways the spirit of what's happening here. And it's American innovation. It's those creative ideas, the trailblazers, that sort of thing. And Zach is a perfect example of that. Somebody that's like just taking what was and really totally reinventing it, totally coming, he came from a background of being a scooter and motorcycle dealer, went into the bike space, and now really reimagining what bikes can do and taking them to their limits. And I think that that's something that's only really possible if you can create a space and create an environment, an ecosystem that can support that. And so we're just really privileged to be part of that, and we're excited about what other things are going to kind of happen. I mean, there's a electric dirt bike company coming. They started working in the space and called Dust Moto. I don't know if you heard of them, but really pretty wild.
Started in Oregon, really got going, and then they'll be building their first batch of bikes actually with Beacon right here in the building. And so the perfect example of it kind of pulling this ecosystem, pulling everyone together, and giving a very viable, sustainable first option for them to do small batch contract manufacturing, and then hopefully work with another partner down the road to do much larger batches. They scale into that.
It's amazing. Well, I'm seeing a lot of goodies in here.
Really interesting stuff in here. Everything from these tuk-tuks that they're using as like a local farm delivery. So they'll have like these urban farms and they deliver around the neighborhood using these with refrigeration and different things like that. You have right over here, it's a autonomous snow removal system.
All right, I need one of those.
Right? And so you can see how it's not just e-bikes and different things like that really all these companies need these ecosystems. And here's one of the first electric quads. This is their first prototype. They're right now working on their third prototype, getting ready to go into production. And it's really been amazing to see how they've been able to innovate on what they first built and what they're doing today.
I mean, the idea behind Beacon's, build out of this is batch. You can rent these stations on a month-to-month basis. So the electric quad company is actually building out their third vehicle in here. All the tools, parts, dropped air, all of the real space and access to large facilities that they need.
Ultimately, there's a variety of different companies, and so they have all these tools accessible. And then there's a lot of shared tools with their shared team members as well. So if they need an extra hand for things, and again, really the idea behind Bloom in many ways is to move some of those fixed costs into variable costs, because quite often somebody might bring somebody on, but they need them for a short period of time. And even, as you think people are moving more into this like flexible work environment, I think it's really important to have that. Loads of different tools. We have welding here. There's a CNC bender for tubing. So you're able to produce all sorts of parts. But something that's really quite special is as we turn the corner here, there's what's called a laser tube cutter. And really, most mobility companies are based on a tubular metal frame to be able to take a long tube like this that's 20 feet long and chop it down into whatever size configuration you might need. You can basically, take it, cut all sorts of holes in it, cut into whatever shape. And what would normally take quite a bit of time to do manually can do it in an automated way, really quite fast. So seat is operating, and you can see this is the part that he's actually going to cut out of the material, and ultimately the laser is gonna cut through this. Like it's pretty wild what it's capable of.
What's interesting to me about that is, as we talked a little bit about you partnering with brands that maybe were struggling and going to go out of business, and now you're bringing them back to life. Is there a sense of like optimization of the product that happens as well once you fold in some of those types of partnerships?
I think historically a lot of companies, they design a product and they like let somebody else figure all that stuff out. But I think by doing more things locally, it allows for a more collaborative process. It allows for more folks to get involved in that process. Even one of the things that happens here is companies are building prototypes, but their contract manufacturer for scale is collaborative early in that process and allow them to understand, hey, this is what it might look like for manufacturing, and help them to understand what some of those choices they're making early on, how that might impact them down the line, which quite often is an afterthought, and it's a misstep for a lot of these companies. And then the other aspect which we feel is really important is the idea of the collaboration between brands. So they're all learning from each other, which normally you don't really have an environment to support that, but I think it's really critical. Of course, you have your unique IP in certain elements, but there's still many things that we can collaborate and learn and develop standards and protocols around, and we really try to encourage that wherever possible.
Yeah, and look, Beacon is one of 8 of our contract manufacturing partners, and it fits an important step in going from prototyping, small batch contract manufacturing, and then we bring in the larger scale contract manufacturers in the area, but also throughout the network around the country, and they really see, all right, great, we can then take it from the first couple of batches here within the facilities, and now we can bring it up to the 100,000 next phase, and that's an important part of the Bloom network. Offering this, if it's earlier in the company's growth, or in releasing a new product, it really de-risks, really creates a more sustainable business model, which quite frankly is really a part of just keeping these companies operating much more efficiently. Beacon also has a 180,000 square foot warehouse that does distribution for goods, and really bringing that cost down for a lot of these companies as well, because you need to be able to build and put that together, but you also need to be able to distribute much more efficiently.
Absolutely.
Inside of here we have welding, traditional TIG welding. We also have laser welding with a collaborative robot. Beacon was basically spawned out of Detroit bikes. And if you think about the history of the automotive industry, even thinking about the history of the aviation industry, it's all really bike mechanics. That's who started this whole thing. And so who's going to usher in this kind of new era? It's likely going to be, innovative bike mechanics, so we're really excited about that.
So this space very much reminds me of the Brooklyn Newlab facility. So can you kind of tell me what's the difference between these two? Because it looks like there's an extra layer on top, but even a bigger building.
It is. It's actually 3 times the size of the Brooklyn location. Obviously, a lot of the same design elements, and actually Newlab is about to announce their 4th, 5th, and 6th location. So they're growing. There's going to be many more of these around the globe, actually, as they're expanding. But yeah, this is an incredible facility for both. You've got all the prototyping and small batch manufacturing downstairs that we saw, but then incredible office space and meeting space and event space. And our offices are also up here. Let's see them.
Yeah, let's see them.
So this is our office, but before we go in, you could also see one of the companies that we're working with, Land. Really impressive company. They're actually manufacturing. They're really an example and an inspiration for what we're doing in many ways. But they're actually manufacturing their motorcycle in Cleveland, but we're supporting them with logistics. So we have this kind of unique way of moving bikes around the U.S. without a box. We just announced an electric snowmobile company or electric snow bike company called Moonbikes.
Yeah.
This is where we work every day. Yeah, I guess in a lot of ways a testament to where we started with bikes, but definitely evolving and continuing to grow beyond that, which has been an exciting journey.
One of the first companies that we started working with back in March when the platform went live was, again, beloved brand Cake. So helping them with their logistics, replacement parts, warehousing, and really helping the brand reestablish itself in North America.
Right. So the original owners of Cake, they ended up selling it off, the assets, to someone else, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So they went through restructuring in beginning of this year, and we worked with the new group that was acquiring the assets in North America and relaunching the brand, who has a close relationship with the Scandinavian group that acquired the global. And so really putting the piece together, again, reestablishing itself and barely skipping a beat to be able to work with and support them in their relaunch in a much more efficient structure.
I know that Bloom has just gotten started, but what are the next steps for you guys?
Really just continue to grow and expand. I mean, there's sometimes a natural evolution of brands in the way that they work with us as we get deeper. Some of these things take time. I mean, some companies, they spend years to establish their supply chain. So, we're seeing some of those shifts, but ultimately, we're just excited about the interest in growth and what we're doing. We're seeing continued brands come on board, and as we continue to grow, we continue to get stronger, and we continue to bring those benefits to the members on the platform. So it's both on the brand side and then on the supply side. We're always interested in talking and meeting with innovative folks that are interested in working in with this space, because we really feel like we can help them translate their resources into the needs of our members. And so on both sides of the equation, and then ultimately just anyone that's just interested in supporting, because we feel like we're, in a lot of ways, this is a company, but ultimately we feel like this is a movement to really build an ecosystem to support these products. And so we're really honored and appreciative of you guys coming and covering this and helping get the word out. And so if others can do that the same, we appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate having some time to walk around here and really get the backstory of what you're truly doing here to move the e-mobility industry forward, because I haven't seen anything quite like these two minds come together and create a company to try to push that in a way that is more efficient for a lot of brands to get into it. So it's a treat. Thank you.